Joker Folie Deux continues the social critique introduced by its predecessor, taking us deeper into Arthur Fleck's complex psyche and his unsettling journey with Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn. As a marginalized, broken man isolated by society, Arthur endures rejection, mockery, and is constantly shoved toward the edge of madness. Director Todd Phillips' decision to incorporate musical elements adds a surreal dimension, amplifying Arthur's deep psychological turmoil and chaotic emotions. The film opens in Arkham Asylum, a cold and unforgiving environment that mirrors modern society's apathy toward individual suffering. Here, Arthur's yearning for understanding and affection is painfully unfulfilled. His only solace appears in Harley, who, like him, is a rebellious spirit beset by loneliness. Their twisted codependent relationship echoes a dark exploration of human vulnerability, as Arthur grasps for connection that ultimately feels hollow and imaginary, a temporary balm to his inner despair. In Joker, Arthur no longer passively endures. He begins a destructive, angry resistance against the society that relentlessly oppressed him. Yet, his awakening is hardly heroic. It is chaotic and violent, an outpouring of bitterness and frustration at a world that has stripped him of every semblance of humanity. This anti-heroic defiance is less a rise to freedom and more an act of despair, echoing a despairing confrontation with a society that turns a blind eye to the marginalized. Phillips' nonlinear storytelling structure cleverly interweaves reality with Arthur's distorted perceptions, creating a blurred line between truth and fantasy. Through the musical format, Phillips externalizes Arthur's internal struggles, bringing an intense visual and auditory experience that plunges the audience into Arthur's volatile state of mind. While some viewers may find the musical sequences jarring, they serve as an effective representation of Arthur's emotional turmoil. Joaquin Phoenix once again delivers an outstanding performance as Arthur Fleck, capturing his character's pain, isolation, and bitter anger. His portrayal of Arthur's complex emotional transitions is most evident in scenes with Harley, where he displays Arthur's vulnerability and need for love, but also the anger and denial that pervades his soul. Lady Gaga, too, shines as Harley, a figure of rebellion and pathos, adding new layers to the film's complex psychological landscape. Together, their scenes reveal a haunting and tragic dependency that leaves viewers with a profound sense of empathy and dread. The film's powerful social critique reflects Arthur's character as a symbolic casualty of a society obsessed with sensory pleasure and desensitized to suffering. Joker becomes an allegory for society's detachment from human empathy, exploring a world where superficial gratification replaces meaningful connection. Arthur's twisted reality underlines the moral and emotional decay around him, as he seeks to transcend his pain, but instead becomes a distorted mirror of the very cruelty he's endured. The film's polarizing nature also opens the door for discussion. Arthur's retribution is neither redemptive nor sympathetic. It is full of disturbing rage and dissolution, making him a challenging character to root for. This ambiguity, this tug-of-war between a villain's vengeance and a damaged soul's cry for help, presents audiences with a raw, uncomfortable depiction of humanity's darker instincts. As Arthur sheds the Joker identity, his self-awareness cracks under the pressure of his reality, leading him toward self-destruction rather than salvation. His understanding of isolation and rejection becomes crushing, and as he relinquishes his illusions, it feels like a liberation through surrender, a deeply tragic sense of release. The film ultimately offers a harrowing portrait of a repressed soul in a fractured society, where Arthur's longing for connection meets only apathy and rejection. Joker is an intense, thought-provoking exploration of human despair and resilience amid harsh societal scrutiny. Arthur's story is less a personal tragedy than a painful critique of the broader system, where emotional needs are often stifled and where voices like Arthur's go unheard. Philip's artistic choices, particularly his use of musicality, give the film a surreal, haunting quality, as Arthur's journey provokes reflection on our own world's failings. In court, the psychiatrist asserts that one of Arthur's common mental illnesses is his inability to understand others' emotions. Yet, trembling on the witness stand, Arthur's former colleague, the dwarf who once witnessed his violent outburst, states that Arthur was the only one who never mocked him and genuinely treated him well. Arthur was the only one able to empathize with and understand him. After watching the only person who treated him kindly descend into a mad frenzy, the dwarf was left traumatized, suffering from sleepless nights. By defining Arthur as a madman incapable of understanding emotions, the mainstream, represented by the psychiatrist, had long overlooked that Arthur, marginalized since childhood and slowly pushed to the social and economic bottom, had never been genuinely understood or empathized with by anyone. Even his mother viewed him as an other and an object, sneering at his experiences. Due to differences in class and life background, Arthur exists in a vast divide from mainstream society, unable to understand their jokes, just as they fail to understand his. People only see Arthur himself as a joke. With society rejecting Arthur's subjectivity, discarding, crushing, and ignoring him, they ultimately turn and accuse Arthur of being unable to understand others' emotions. Yet, when Arthur is with his fellow marginalized colleague, the dwarf, he fully demonstrates his capacity to empathize with others' feelings. When Lee, a woman fanatically obsessed with Joker, appears, Arthur's seemingly sealed life cracks open. He believes that Lee is the first person in his life capable of sharing his emotions, understanding his past, and truly reciprocating his feelings. In simple terms, she becomes the one who can genuinely love him, a love and understanding that even his mother could never give. In Arthur's desolate world, the chance to be completely understood by someone else is so precious, and, in his hopeless life, a flicker of light he desperately clings to. Encouraged by Lee's varied support, Arthur continues his mad show, firing his defense attorney to defend himself as Joker, engaging in his outlandish, unrestrained performance. As he does, the spectators at court mockingly cheer him on. Outside the courtroom, Lee and the audience watching through screens are captivated by Joker's performance. In this film, Joker no longer represents just a comic book character. The very symbol of Joker becomes entirely fused with Arthur himself. Since childhood, Arthur's mother had told him he was born to bring laughter to others, so he took up work as a street clown. For Arthur, embodying this persona was a way to gain others' attention and approval. After committing a murder as Joker on live television, he began to amass a following of admirers and imitators. While performing in court, he became an object for audiences to consume. Throughout all this, he is constantly watched, like a clown providing emotional value through exaggerated displays, gaining the recognition he longs for in the process. Yet, during his closing statement, Arthur's strength falters, and he stops his act, tearfully expressing his true feelings, attempting to strip away the image of Joker, declaring only Arthur remains. He seeks to shed the Joker persona and the meanings it has imposed on him. As this happens, Lee stands up and leaves the courtroom, and others in the audience soon follow. Finding her on the steps, Arthur realizes that Lee never loved his true feelings or personality, but rather adored his wild fantasies, his Joker persona, and his dazzling performance. What truly attracted her was the Joker symbol Arthur embodied. Lee, like the courtroom spectators and television viewers, only wanted to consume Joker, the madman and lunatic, a spectacle to entertain, enthrall, and even idolize. Lee understood only Joker's extreme mania, but could not, and did not want to understand the true feelings of Arthur beneath the mask. The crack in Arthur's life abruptly closes. Once again, no one can understand or imagine Arthur's feelings, leaving him in the absolute solitude he's known since childhood. The film features numerous scenes of televised broadcasts. Whether in conversations, interviews, court trials, or Arthur's imagined song and dance numbers, he is often seen through a camera's lens. The director intentionally shows scenes of cameras, monitors, television screens, and even switches to a first-person view of the recording camera, highlighting the presence of media. Through this lens, Joker's madness is broadcast as a commodity into every home, meant to be consumed, entertained, or laughed at. This portrayal parallels the real-world phenomenon following the first Joker film, which became wildly popular. On screen, Joker's mania and extremes provided a cathartic outlet for some viewers, who consumed him as a spectacle. Of course, the first film also revealed Arthur's backstory and hardships, but now, many viewers seem only interested in what they can extract and consume from Joker on screen, seeking something for their own release and entertainment, no longer considering that the face on the screen also has a subjective experience and complex emotions of its own. This inevitably brings to mind South Korean director Lee Chang-dong's Oasis. In both Oasis and Joker Folie, Deux, the directors expose society's alienation and marginalization of those on the fringes, placing viewers in a moral test that prompts them to reflect on their own attitudes toward the other. In Oasis, Lee Chang-dong's delicate portrayal allows the audience to experience the protagonist's suffering and desire. However, some theatergoers laughed during scenes where the protagonist, due to physical disability, exhibits abnormal behavior. This laughter reveals an unconscious sense of superiority, where viewers, comfortable in their status as normal individuals, lose the ability to empathize with the protagonist's emotions. Similarly, in Joker, Arthur is defined by mainstream society as both a criminal and a madman, allowing audiences to consume his pain and madness with impunity, supported by the legitimacy of moral distance. The roles of the spectators in both films serve as a reminder that when marginalized groups are stripped of their individuality and emotional resonance, the real target of mockery is, in fact, our own limited perception of human complexity. This film resonates with Mindhunter, which I have been watching recently. Can we attempt to trace back and understand who these heinous criminals were before they became murderers? Is it possible for us to reconstruct the humanity of those the mainstream labels as monsters? Just as Joker allows us to explore Arthur's past, pressured and shaped by his family and society, we are granted a chance to imagine him as a complex individual. Understanding does not imply forgiveness or agreement. Rather, it suggests that by exploring their past, we might uncover the contributing factors of their lives and examine the structural social forces at play. These factors make up their broken lives. For Arthur, no matter what he does, there is no going back, and the only solution he sees is to blow everything up. However, by challenging and addressing these very factors, we might be able to change the lives of future Arthurs from the start. In every sense, Joker, Folie à Deux brings something new and unsettling to the Joker legacy. Arthur's story is a window into a world where human connection is fragile, and social isolation leaves scars that run deep. The film invites us to consider both the darker aspects of human nature and the sobering impact of a world that often looks away from the suffering of those it leaves behind.